Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update from FireFox Gold, chatting with the chairman and co-founder Patrick Highsmith. Been a while since I last chatted with FireFox. It was back in May of last year that I had a webinar with Patrick outlining the company's plans in Finland, gold exploration in the Lapland Greenstone belt. So we have talked a lot about what's going on in that belt and a lot of the work that's happening there. And now FireFox has just launched their largest drill campaign ever at the Mustajärvi project. Company also holds the Yesio and the Sarvi projects. So Patrick, let's start off here with a quick little overview. Company just raised $7 million, the largest raise ever. With that, you consolidated your shares 10 to 1, and now you're drilling at Mustajärvi. Talk to us about this Mustajärvi project, please. There has been some prior drilling. There are discoveries made. Bring everybody up to speed, please.
Absolutely, Corey, and thanks for spending some time with me today. It's good to be back, and it's an exciting time for the company. You referred to our Mustajärvi project. It was one of our two listing properties. Corey, we acquired the property in 2018, even before we listed. Really inexpensive deal, right off a paved highway in Lapland. And the reason we paid attention back then was that Outokumpu, Finland's national mining company back in the day in the 90s, had drilled a few holes there, none of them deeper than 50 meters, believe it or not. And almost every one of them, I think, hit narrow intercepts with good grade, a couple of meters of 10 grams type of numbers. And we relogged that core and looked at the property and acquired it outright and listed with it. And even in our first drill program, we announced in early 2019, 2 meters of 45 grams, Corey. So the property has always yielded grade. And in fact, there was a tiny little open pit, the size of two or three of my house footprints sitting there, where a local miner had taken a little bit of gold off the surface there. But we followed up and immediately started hitting gold, but narrow. Typical of these orogenic gold systems, when you only see veins. Sometimes they can be very spectacular veins, but nevertheless fairly narrow. So our team did magnetics, we did base of till sampling, and we saw that there's a big structure running through that, at least 3 kilometers long. And as the team stretched out our exploration to the northeast, we found anomalies. We found where that shear zone sort of flexed a little bit, and we followed up on that, and we made another discovery. We went northeast, so we called it the northeast target. And again, excellent intercepts. I think initially we hit a couple of meters of 30 grams. Market didn't get too excited, but then we offset from that and hit a bonanza grade hole with 1.3 meters of 95 grams and culminating in almost 8 meters of 16 grams in the so-called northeast target. Again, a lode, one of these lodes or lozenge-shaped deposits of high-grade gold with a lot of structure involved, Corey. And just remember, picture a property with excellent infrastructure right off a paved highway, but just a few meters of glacial dirt on top of everything. So no outcrop. So that's the challenge, right? You can use geophysics and remote tools, and we could visualize the structure from the geophysics and from our drilling. And so we persisted, but never with enough money, Corey. We would raise 2 to 4 million really in a good year, and often battling market conditions. And then finally, the geology team chased this structure even further east and across the highway and found another cluster of till anomalies with a magnetic feature where the structure sort of deflected. And that's when the really good results started to come. In 2021 and 2022 and 2023, we were drilling intercepts like 15 meters at 13 grams from only 11 meters depth, 13 meters at 15 grams from 30 meters depth. And then one of the strongest holes on the property, 14 meters of 29 grams from only 24 meters depth in an angled hole, Corey. So these were thicker, right? They're not just veins. It was a different style of mineralization. The rock was replaced with the hydrothermal alteration, thicker zones of gold at quite nice grades. And so then in late in 2023, we trenched for the first time. We removed 5 or 6 meters of that glacial dirt, and we found in a trench 7 meters, just under 7 meters of 59 grams per ton. Really, really impressive intercept coming to surface 80 meters off the paved highway. But as you know, 2023, really tough market. The stock barely moved. And of course, not ever having much cash in the treasury, the market sort of knows you're going to need to finance again. And we did. And again, really good results continued through 2024. And so imagine now 1.5 kilometers of this structure has been drilled. 3 lodes have been discovered there. We call them the central zone, the northeast zone, and the east zone. And those 3 lodes are reflected in generally fairly high grades. They come quite close to surface. And the deepest intercepts in them, Corey, are about 250 meters below surface. We finally drilled a couple of deep holes in 2023 and 2024. And when we did that, we did hit some deeper intercepts like 13 meters of 3 grams at 230 meters depth and 2.5 meters at 15 grams at 248 meters depth. So that's important, showing some depth continuity. So that's where we sit. We sit with an emerging discovery. We're confident that those grades and that thickness of mineralization over only 1.5 kilometers of the structure being tested, no drilling in between those 3 zones. So a lot more work to do, but we really ended up sort of waiting out last year. Corey, no real drilling took place in 2024. We worked on geophysics, we worked on 3D modeling, we worked on developing new targets, and now that's culminated in the sort of ammunition for a significant financing that we just closed. And as you say, launching the biggest drill program that we've ever put forth on the Mustajärvi property. About 15,000 meters have been drilled in the history of the property, and we're expecting to drill well over 10,000 meters over the next several months.
Okay, so Patrick, I'm going to post figure 1 from that recent news release that shows the project in all these different target zones. You mentioned the central zone, northeast zone, and the east zone. That's where we see most of the historic drilling being done, and does seem like the best results have come from the east zone. So give us the lay of the land of the at least 10,000 meters that you're planning on drilling across this sheer zone. How much will be in the east zone? How much will be across these other targets, either connecting them or expanding on what you've already found?
Yeah, great question. As we showed in the second figure there, we had some nice geophysical anomalies around the east zone. And really, the first hole's been collared quite a ways to the southwest. We can see that zone coming to surface. I'm talking about the east zone, Corey. It comes to surface there, and then it plunges back to the southwest. As you hear us geologists talking all the time, that plunge is important. These things are structurally controlled. So they're like a lozenge in the ground, and they have some orientation and a thickness and a preferred orientation, if you will. And that one is plunging back to the southwest. And we've done enough work now to demonstrate that. So we're testing that with this first hole into the geophysical target that suggests there might be pyrite down there. On this property, pyrite goes with the gold. That's a good thing. So we've started testing that direction. As you'll also notice if you zoom back a little bit, going in that direction, you get back towards the northeast target where we chase that one off, and it appears to have a plunge off to the northeast. So our focus with this drill program, I like to say that it's sort of setting the stage for what we expect, optimistically speaking, and with all the appropriate caveats. With success here, we believe that we'll be looking at the potential of our first mineral resource estimate next year. And the reason I say we're not certain about that yet is you do need to fill in between these zones, and you also need to check their depth continuity. And so that's what we've done with a couple of holes, Corey, but we have literally only drilled 2 holes into those deeper intercepts I mentioned. So this continuation to the southwest is key. So I would say that a lot of the meterage will be at the east target, both filling in on some of these geophysical anomalies that seem to indicate continuation of those higher grade pyrite bearing zones. Okay, so they'll be relatively close in, but with the first hole being a 280 meter step out, you can see that we're also trying to tie in the zones that continue along that structure back to the southwest. So I would say, I don't want to get too specific on it because we're giving a lot of leeway to our exploration manager on this based on results, because Mustajärvi is the kind of property, Corey, where we can drill year round. There's not very much swampy ground, so we don't have to wait for it to freeze up in the winter, as we often prefer in Finland. So we've started here in the late summer, but we do have the opportunity to drill even in some of the swampy locations when they freeze up, because we'll drill right through the winter, which is the preferred time to drill here. So you'll see certainly more than 50% of the drilling will be from the east target back towards the northeast zone there. There's also a structure labeled on that map, or a target labeled on figure 1 as the triangle target. We wrote about that early this year. It's a rare bit of outcrop on the property, almost 5 grams per ton. It appears to be cropping out along a fault, and that fault projects back into the Mustajärvi shear zone and is completely undrilled. So that target will definitely get tested as well. And it falls into that category of being between the northeast zone and the east zone. So I would say better than 50% will be in that area. And then the central zone, while it had some early nice intercepts, we have not really returned to it with our increased knowledge that we've gained from all the work on the east target in particular, where we've done a lot of structural geology, a lot of measurements of these structures, a lot better understanding of the alteration and the mineralization in general. So I'm sure there will be some targets in the central zone as well. And then that leaves us, I would say, Corey, something like 20% or 25% of the drilling that will be really exploration in nature. You see the Gabbro target mentioned on that. That's immediately to the southwest from the central zone. You see Mustajärvi West, which is well down to the southwest on that figure. And that's a really important structural zone down there where 2 major shear zones intersect. And we have never had the budget to advance that target or drill it. And then our exploration manager, Mikko Neninen, also summarized for me targets at Mustajärvi East and Picoletto out to the east. But those are contingent on the bit of work we're doing starting this week, which is base of till sampling, where we sort of drill through that glacial sediment and sample the basal bedrock, and a bit more geophysics. So we're certainly keeping those exploration holes in kind of flux where the results will drive us to the best new targets. So I would say that overall, the program is a bit of a hybrid of infill between known areas of mineralization and stepping out from those to tie them to the other features that we've been chasing on this property. Just the kind of thing you can do with a sufficient budget to keep drilling, Corey, rather than be able to drill only a couple of thousand meters and have to go away and look for money again, often in a weak market. So we're cashed up now, and we will be able to execute a little bit depending on results, but with an overarching mission of filling in the gaps between these excellent drill intercepts and figuring out the controls that will hopefully tie them together.
Okay, so very much a blended program here. A lot of the drilling, yes, happening around the east zone, northeast zone, and central zone. And it does sound like it is, in a way, resource drilling. So you might have a resource, but then also this new exploration. Just going back to that kind of resource drilling, or in around where a lot of that old drilling happened, you mentioned the depth component, about 230 meters. That's pretty much where most of the drill holes have stopped. How aggressively are you going to be testing the depth component going down to, let's say, 300 or 400 meters?
Oh, I love it, Corey. You sound like a geologist on this one. We've had multiple visitors in our core shack in Finland, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard people in there looking at the core going, my goodness, you've not drilled deep anywhere on this property. And of course, our answer being a poor junior is, well, we're hitting high grade at surface, so we'd like to keep doing that. And of course you do. But these orogenic systems are known for continuing to significant depth. The Kittilä mine, where Agnico is mining, the deposit contains 9 million ounces in total. It's a very large gold deposit. That's historical production plus resources and reserves, of course. And there are ore grade intercepts below 2 kilometers, Corey. That's one of the good things about orogenic gold, is you often start with open pit and then go underground. And that's exactly what happened at the Kittilä mine. So it is an important question. And that's why we put those deeper holes in. You know, when we were looking at this discovery in the early days, hitting all this grade at surface, it was Quentin Henney, my colleague and friend at Crescat and San Cristobal Mining. And he was saying, look, don't step out too far too fast. Figure out the controls, and then we'll figure out which way this thing plunges. And all of our eyes were telling us the east zone plunges back to the southwest, and a lot of measurements have confirmed that. So certainly, Corey, I expect to see the deepest holes yet drilled on this project to happen during this campaign. I would say that a 400 or 500 meter hole would be as deep as we would need to go at this early stage of delineation. But we do want to see that these zones continue. There are multiple structural controls in this. And if one looks at the figures in our presentation, you can see that the east zone does have a nice footprint at surface. And you can see if you look at these intercepts I mentioned that are deeper, down to 230 and 250 meters respectively, it may well be a parallel zone that formed, it either formed at greater depth, but in the same structural control as the surface zone, or it even could be related, like structurally offset, downdrop from the surface footprint. Whatever the case, we need to chase that. And it's on the southeast side of the deposit. So if people are looking at the figures in our presentation, you'll see the east zone and you'll see these couple of hits we have on the southeast side of that. And we believe that's a parallel trend, Corey, and that's going to require a good bit of drilling down to 300 and 400 meter depths. But no plans to drill anything super deep just yet. Our drillers are excellent. We drill oriented core, Corey, which means we know the direction of the structures when we hit them most of the time with good measurements from the oriented core. So that helps us figure out, okay, this structure is trending that direction in three-dimensional space. And our team is doing a lot more work in 3 dimensions than in the early days of the project. So we'll keep everybody posted when we drill deeper holes. But initially, I think the first holes are, a lot of them are headed for about 300 meters depth. But we do expect to go deeper than that. So it's a good question and a good point. You want to see that these things continue to depth for their future underground mine life, way out in the future, perhaps, if we're lucky.
All right. So a lot of drilling coming. It just started. But let's also talk about some of the other projects that you have, the Yesio project and the Sarvi project. Again, both in Finland along this Lapland Greenstone belt. Talk to me about what money could be allocated towards these projects and what work could be done there this year heading into next year.
Yeah, great question. We've always had a large land position, and our team's very good at paying attention to the tenement situation, which is dynamic in Finland. The costs of holding land are relatively high, which causes turnover in the land holdings, which is great. And we've seized on that opportunity. And Yesio is a larger project. I would move you in your mind about 30 kilometers to the southeast from Mustajärvi. And over in that area, there's a through-going structure there called the Serka line or the Serka shear zone. And the Serka would be the equivalent to some of the big faults in Canada, like the Porcupine Dester, if we were up in Timmins, for instance, or the Cadillac Break. These are things that are through-going structures, and that structure called the Serka bends through our Yesio project. And we've done some work in the north part of that property 3 years ago, and some strong anomalies there underneath a swamp, and we drilled a few holes and hit some structure, but not much gold. But then about 10 kilometers south, we started finding gold in outcrop, rare outcrop in this part of the world, Corey. So if people look at our presentation on the website, they'll see rock chip samples ranging from a couple of grams up to 30 grams, which have all been press released over the few years we've been working there. And they seem to constitute smoke. You know, they're along a fault system there. Corey, maybe they're not in the right host rocks to be a big gold deposit target just yet, but there's a big crossing structure, and we've shown these maps in our presentation for a year or two now. And it's as if that all that gold up to 10 grams, 30 grams, is around the edges of a big magnetic low, which again is under a swampy area. This is where the Ikkari discovery was made by Rupert, by the way, in one of these swamps. And of course, that makes it difficult to explore without base of till sampling. And given our limited budgets, the bit of work we've done at Yesio for the last few years, turning up these local gold anomalies, has been very shallow and without the budget to do sustained base of till sampling. So we are going to proceed to evaluate that Yesio target much more thoroughly. There's a big structure that people can see in our presentation that heads up to the northwest from that high-grade gold. And we do expect to be evaluating that target. And my geologists have advised me to expect a drilling budget proposal for Yesio. It will be much smaller than Mustajärvi, of course, because it's early days on this target. But I would expect to see more than 1,000 meters there upon any positive results from our sort of targeting work. Sarvi, I just shift gears there and maybe go about 20 kilometers north from there, just north of the Ikkari discovery by Rupert. They have a big land position there, of course, and we share an 8-kilometer property boundary with our 100% owned Sarvi property. And a lot north of that, we have similar structures, some of the same rocks continuing across the property boundary onto our Sarvi property. And about half of that property is also beneath a low-lying area, the swampy, and you like to wait till the winter when that freezes to do your exploration there. But the northern half of the property is high ground. There's a power line right of way going through there, and north of that is high ground. And in that area, what we've seen is some copper gold anomalies and silver anomalies across the property in a very interesting suite of mafic volcanic rocks that has hosted, obviously, the Kittila mine farther north, and a very interesting set of apparent structural intersections we've interpreted from magnetic data. So Sarvi will see a return to thorough prospecting and some additional base of till sampling, perhaps. And there's a target a little bit further west where the Geological Survey of Finland drilled a hole with, a narrow intercept, something like a half a meter of 3 grams per ton, upon which we've done zero follow-up. So again, we were focusing on Mustajärvi and slowly advancing Sarvi, and we expect to kick that up a notch this year too. And we'll be giving an update on Sarvi and Yesio during September, perhaps around the time of Beaver Creek. We'll just give kind of a technical update on that area. And we do expect to have the core drill return to the Sarvi property as well. And we're excited, of course, to see Rupert continuing to advance from pre-feasibility on the Ikari project further and further towards development. And we'll be their neighbor on the north side in our 100% owned Sarvi property.
All right, Patrick, thank you very much for this update. A lot now going on with this company. Hey, it's a totally different market here where you just raised, again, that's $7 million. You had Agnico still joining in on that financing for their pro rata. You also have Crescat that is still a shareholder here. And now you're going to be putting a lot of money to work in the ground. So I'll keep following along with you. Thank you very much for this update. And for everyone who has any follow-up questions for Patrick, please email me, fleck@kereport.com. I'll get Patrick to address those personally and on future interviews if we have time and if they warrant the discussion on the back of more news. Patrick, thank you very much for the update today.
Thank you, Corey. Good to be with you. Look forward to more of these going forward.